What do these books and movies have in common? Fight Club, American Psycho, Donnie Darko, 1984, Brothers Karamazov, and The Lord of the Flies. They all use Plato's idea of the tripartite soul as a lens through which to observe what it means to be human. I don't agree with Plato that our soul is made up of three radically distinct parts. But these aspects are wonderful tools that storytellers have used to explore the human condition. In his book, The Abolition of Man, C.S. Lewis describes the healthy, balanced person as one in which the head rules the belly through the chest. The reason controls the appetites through the spirit. In the chapter called Men Without Chests, Lewis critiques our culture because we don't value the middle part, the heart, the chest, the spirited. And this is bad because, according to Lewis, this is the most important part. It's the part that makes us human. Because when the head doesn't rule the belly through the chest, then the belly rules. Instincts, passions, urges, desires. This is not what humans do. This is a disordered soul. First, let's talk about Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club is we're not supposed to talk about Fight Club. And that's the second rule too. Well, let's talk about the movie and the book and not the club. Fight Club is about a lot of things. But I'd say the main thing it critiques is what a human being is in modern society. The unnamed narrator, played by Edward Norton, is chestless. He has no healthy emotions, no spirit, no courage, no assertiveness, no will. He has no essential self, just one he has constructed by consumer products. And his soul is fragmented, and he interacts with the world with an anemic mind. His alter ego is Tyler Durden, who is played by Brad Pitt. He embodies a more anarchic, physical, instinctual approach. He represents the appetitive part of the soul, the visceral, the sexual, the impulsive. And because the narrator has no chest, Tyler Durden, the appetites, he rules. American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis shows another character with no chest. Patrick Bateman, the protagonist, presents himself as a successful, rational, and intellectually sophisticated man. He's a wealthy investment banker with a meticulous attention to detail, particularly in his daily routines and appearance. But his soul is fragmented. He lacks the spirited aspect of the soul, a connection to universal values, the good, the true, and the beautiful. So his appetites call the shots. He looks all put together on the outside, but beneath this facade of reason lies a deeply disturbed psyche, as is evidenced by his violent fantasies and homicidal tendencies. Patrick's insatiable appetite is depicted through his hedonistic lifestyle, characterized by his excessive consumption of luxury goods, drugs, alcohol, and sexual exploits. Like Fight Club, this movie too is a critique of our culture's detachment from and loss of Plato's spirited dimension of the human soul, Lewis's chest. Without it, we might as well do what Patrick Bateman does. His relentless pursuit of pleasure serves as a means of escaping the emptiness and the nihilism that pervades his existence. And Donnie Darko. Donnie is the troubled protagonist who struggles with his mental health issues. This is symbolic, of course, that his head or intellectual dimension is in trouble. We have another disordered soul. Donnie is shown to be a deeply introspective and intellectually curious individual. He questions the nature of reality, and he explores philosophical ideas. And he wants to understand the meaning behind his visions and experiences. So that's the intellectual. The appetite is represented by Frank, a mysterious figure in a rabbit costume that appears to Donnie. Frank serves as a destabilizing influence, urging Donnie to embrace his darker impulses and rebel against societal norms. This looks like trouble. In the absence of the spirited aspect of the soul, it looks as if the appetites will dominate the mind, which is always weaker than the other two parts. But Donnie's chest or heart is eventually ignited with a sense of purpose and defiance, which leads him to confront the existential anxieties and the moral ambiguities of his reality. These are some great movies that riff off of Plato's tripartite soul. And there are some great books that do this too for various purposes. Namely, the Brothers Karamazov, Lord of the Flies, and 1984. I have a 4-part series on 1984 that goes into great detail on all this. You can find the links in the description. So now let's talk about Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This book can be read through the lens of Plato's tripartite soul, because each of the brothers represent a different aspect. The brothers have a father, Fyodor Karamazov. He's a big bundle of self-indulgent appetite. His selfishness and lack of moral restraint epitomize the destructive potential of unchecked desires. His appetites lead to the degradation of himself and those around him. Ivan Karamazov is the intellectual and philosophical one. He has a sharp intellect and he holds a rational skepticism, and with a little bit of existential angst, because according to Dostoevsky, it seems that the head can only get you so far. Ivan grapples with the profound questions about the nature of God, and morality, and human suffering, and he ultimately rejects the existence of a benevolent deity in the face of the world's injustices. Dmitri is another Karamazov brother. He's the passionate and impulsive one. So he kind of represents the spirited part of the soul, but not all that well. Unlike Plato's spirited guardians, he resists submitting to the authority of reason. So he tends to fall into the appetites. He's driven by his emotions, desires, and intense thirst for life. Despite his noble aspirations and his moments of genuine kindness, Dmitri's unrestrained behavior often leads him into conflict and self-destructive behavior. The third brother is Alyosha. He adds a fourth element to Plato's three. It's the spiritual, or the soul proper as Christianity has traditionally understood it. Alyosha serves as a beacon of hope and redemption amidst the moral and existential turmoil experienced by his family and society at large. His embodiment of Christian values and virtues, including forgiveness, compassion, and self-sacrifice, offers a compelling vision of the Christian soul's capacity for transcendence and transformation. It seems to me that Dostoevsky is saying that the head, ruling the belly through the chest, is inadequate. There needs to be this fourth dimension in the mix somewhere. I think that's so cool. And now we turn to The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. In a nutshell, a bunch of boys get stranded on a Pacific island without any adult supervision. The tripartite soul plus the Christian soul is very much a part of Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Piggy represents the intellect. That he wears glasses and is physically weak is only the beginning. It's his role in the story to present the logical and the rational. It's clear to him what needs to be done after the boys are stranded on a Pacific island. He attempts to explain his plans to the others. Everything he says is right, isn't it? Ralph is Plato's guardian. He's Lewis's chest. He's got the strength and the heart to carry out the plans settled upon by the head. It looks like things are moving in the right direction in the beginning of the story. Ralph accepts Piggy's ideas and moves to execute them by exerting some control over the other children. And this includes Jack in the beginning. Jack represents the appetite. It could be argued that he starts out as another guardian, especially with his desire to be honored and his interest in the warrior behavior of hunting pigs. But quite quickly, Jack and his followers devolve into appetite. Now these are all kids, so the appetitive impulses are literally limited to food and drink. But the language and the description of Jack and his gang's killing of the sow point to a symbolic satiation of sexual desires. The cult of Jack is dominated by ritual dancing and chanting, which results in the suspension of reason and results in irrational murder. I speak, of course, of the Simon incident. Like the Brothers Karamazov, this book too has a representative of the Christian soul. It's Simon. Simon seems to bridge the space between the natural and the divine. He serves as a symbol of spirituality and moral goodness in the face of darkness and despair. His compassion and empathy and spiritual insight contrast with the primal instincts and savagery of the other boys. So he kind of offers a glimmer of hope and redemption in a world consumed by fear and violence, until they kill him. So if we understand it, we can see how authors and movie makers have used and adapted the tripartite soul to explore human nature and society. But it's also interesting philosophically. The idea of the tripartite soul started with Plato, but it faded for a time. But around the Enlightenment, we latched back onto it. And we kind of started believing that this was the way things really were. It complemented our devotion to reason. American Christianity, too, has been corrupted by the idea that the human soul is made up of three discrete aspects. And no, just adding a fourth part and calling it the spiritual soul doesn't make it biblical. The view that the Bible has about the human soul is the subject of our next video. So thank you, and we'll see you there.